Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited. Damn excited.
We are so excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh!
Well, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh, he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Intangibles, brought to you by Arrowhead Addict. My name is Bryce Carter. Joining me today is not Christian Ainsworth. Christian, you're looking a little bushier with the beard, a little bit darker haired. Today, I am honored to be joined by Taylor Witt. Taylor co-hosts the It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom podcast, a very popular fan-sided podcast. And Taylor and I kind of like accidentally found out that we work together in another aspect of life. That was actually kind of funny because I just like messaged him and I was like, hey, have you ever heard of the It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom podcast? Because like, surely this can't be the same Taylor Witt. And what did you do?
I said, I think they're good, or no? Didn't I tell you it wasn't me?
You're like, yeah, you're like, no, dude, never heard of it. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, okay, forget it. He was like, JK, dude, it's me. So it's always nice at work to be like, you know, talking about NFL agency and free agency or trades or the season or whatever. It's good to have that back and forth. And then, you know, when the boss, well, I am the boss of my team, but if the boss walks by and be like, oh, see, I'm messaging people. I'm working. Taylor, we're talking about things. So very nice to have him on board. And Taylor, I kind of teased it on Twitter a little bit, but you and Austin, very rightfully so, have not been podcasting very much due to some stuff going on in life. It sounds like you guys might have a little bit of an announcement to make. So the floor is yours, sir.
We do. Happy to say we always knew we were getting back on the horse, but we took some time off after the Super Bowl for various reasons. We came back once for the draft, but we are coming back to our regularly scheduled programs of weekly, starting here coming up in 2 weeks, right before training camp or right around the first week of training camp. So we'll be back to our regular shenanigans here before too long.
Yes, I mean, I feel like your siren call has been echoing out there as like, we're seeing people rank Patrick Mahomes as like a bottom, the fifth best quarterback in the NFL. Broncos fans are getting their egos up after Bo Nix got his cheeks clapped in the divisional round or the wild card round of the playoffs. So it's time. Like people are starting to think John Elway is a good quarterback. So we need you guys to step up and enter that role. But it is very good to hear that you guys are back. It's a more fun space when you guys are here. And I was joking with you that maybe we should theme today's show off of Arrested Development or another sitcom, since obviously you guys have some great branding with the sitcom there. We ultimately did not decide to do that, although I will ask you. So Arrested Development, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, both top tier comedies. What else ranks up there for you on TV shows? Like if you weren't going to do it after those two, what show might you do some theming off of? Yeah, I mean, great question. Those are probably definitely Sunny 1, and I think Arrested 2 as my two favorites. So that's a great place to start. I might slot in, 30 Rock, Parks and Rec. Those are both very much easy to. Are you a Seinfeld guy? I am a Seinfeld guy. I watched it growing up. I feel like there's the same vein of humor between those shows. It's a weird, like ironic kind of dark humor a little bit that's there. As long we're all good because you didn't say Friends, and that's really all I cared about. I really like Friends, so we're not all good. Growing up, it's one of those shows in the 90s that you didn't have a ton of options, and I think it's a great show. But Seinfeld and Sunny are basically sister shows, set a couple years apart, obviously, but you get a couple of people that are horrible people. They go off and they kind of do their own thing. And then the episode usually kind of brings them back together. So their shenanigans end up crossing each other. I mean, that was, Seinfeld made 9 seasons doing that brilliantly. And Sunny tends to do that where they kind of start off doing their own thing. And then eventually it's like, oh, the people that I was screwing over and the people that you're screwing over ended up meeting or being the same people. It's a good formula, works really well. Love those shows. Seinfeld always has like So back when I was a kid getting off the bus in high school, depending on how quick or not quick the bus was, I could catch the beginning of Seinfeld. But if you
Nice.
miss the first like 10 minutes of Seinfeld, you've missed
Lost.
some important stuff. So like
You're lost.
I'd get in halfway through, and then at the last like 30 seconds to minute of the episode, Jerry would be like, Kramer, the pepper shaker, and everyone like loses it. And I was like, yeah, like I don't get the pepper shaker. What's happening? But yes, very good shows, very good branding, and a very good fan-sided podcast. It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. So make sure you check out Taylor and Austin's triumphant return to the mic. It's perfect time with training camp coming up. And Taylor, we do have a fun activity to get to today. We're going to be kind of doing a little draft activity around the future of the Chiefs Ring of Honor, some evergreen content here. But real quick, we got to talk about Trey Smith. The Chiefs are, by this time tomorrow, Trey Smith has to be extended or he's playing this season on the franchise tag. It seems like every person who knows what they're talking about, including Slick Rick on Twitter and everything, it's all saying this is going to happen. So I'll ask you the question that maybe not a lot of people are asking. Should it happen? Is this the right move to extend Trey Smith and make him what will certainly be the highest paid guard in the NFL?
Yeah, when you're competing for Super Bowls, you're always kind of in a different mentality than a team just trying to make sure that all the zeros add up on the balance sheet. Like you really have to squeeze every dollar out of your roster. You really have to make sure that anybody that you're locking in long-term, that you see them producing long-term for your team. And I don't think Trey Smith's shown anything to the contrary. I think he's performed extremely well on the field. He's been a linchpin of the offensive line at a time that the rest of his offensive line cohorts, other than Creed Humphrey, have kind of been in and out. And, the money in the NFL goes up and up and up every year. And every time teams wring their hands about extending a guy, I think it's production more than it is money. I don't really think anybody ever really regrets if a guy's productive on the field, you can pay him whatever you want to pay him. And if it feels fine, it's really about extending the wrong guys than it is extending the right guys for too much money. So to me, I think Trey Smith's the right guy. I think he fits the culture. I think he's a really, really good locker room presence, obviously. And then he's a monster on the field. So short answer is yes, they should. And I think it sounds like they're going to.
Did they keep the wrong guard? Should they have kept Joe Thuney? Would you rather have? Would you rather have Trey Smith at what we assume will be $23 million APY for 3 or 4 years, or would you rather have Joe Thuney, which on his current deal this year, so he's set to make $21.5 million the next 2 years. This year, his cap number is $8 million. So
sure.
Joe Thuney's the better player. That's pretty factual. He's older. Yes, he's older. So really what you're asking is you give yourself a shorter runway there, but are they keeping the wrong? I think there's a chance that Joe Thuney, those two guys are going to be parallel to each other, and we're going to have to watch that closely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And Thuney's obviously had a Hall of Fame career so far and has been maybe the best offensive lineman in football for the last 2 or 3 years. He's been unbelievable. And the Bears, they went out and they got him. They needed to shore up that line. If the Chiefs felt like they were able to extend Thuney, then they knew they wouldn't have been able to extend Trey. And so, yeah, you're right. They're going to be compared. We don't know today whether that was the right move or not. We know that the Chiefs came to that conclusion. And so that being said, I also really like to lean on the experts, and I like to lean on Brett Veach and a staff that has put together 5 of the last 6 AFC champions. And it just kind of ends up being one of those things where if Brett Veach tells me, yeah, man, I know we had the decision between Smith and Thuney, we went with Smith, I got to say, okay, until it doesn't work out. And then we can go backwards and give him crap.
Yeah. I think there's a likelihood, like if I had to put my coins in one jar, I feel like the likelihood of Trey Smith being better for longer is probably there. While I think right now Joe Thuney is the better player, and I think the likelihood that Joe Thuney is better this coming year is higher, the drop-off can come quickly, right? And usually older guys, they don't get healthier. And Thuney's been very, very durable here in Kansas City, but he did miss the Super Bowl. So there's always a chance of that, right? And I think you mentioned Brett Veach, they make this habit of they don't extend guys in their 30s. They just don't. The only people that they've really done that for is Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and those are linchpins of the franchise. So it will be very interesting. The one thing that I just wonder with this is like, so Trey Smith, he signs the franchise tag, which is something that a lot of players don't do because they're subject to fines for mandatory minicamp. Trey Smith shows up to mandatory minicamp. This all was kind of like a good faith measurement. This contract, we should know what it is. They start with a tag number, and we know what those numbers are basically since last year, whenever the Panthers, kind of set a record-setting deal with their guard. The numbers should be very straightforward. So I just wonder kind of what is the hang up here? Why is this taking so long whenever it's, quite frankly, very straightforward in the public sphere?
Yeah, great question. First of all, it's very strange to me that Trey Smith is the only player in the NFL currently on the franchise tag. As people that track franchise tag movement and stuff like that over the years, I really just don't remember going into camp and there just being one player in the NFL on the tag. But yes, I think the boilerplate parts of the contract have probably been known by both sides for a long time. I think you're right that it's not just APY that they're signing. It's all kinds of little, fine details and all the stuff that goes into a giant NFL contract. The whole reason that even though when both sides want to get a deal done, why it still can take some time to get everybody's agents and lawyers and everybody on the same page and make sure that they don't have any, weird clauses in there. And I'm sure you're right that the good faith move, Trey Smith went to camp and did everything that he was supposed to do because he is saying, yeah, I want to be here long-term. I'm going to sign. We're going to get a deal done. And that's great to hear. I guess we'll have a much different conversation, much, much different if the news does not break tomorrow the way we expect it to, that the deal did not get done, because I don't really care if you get up to the 11th hour. If you want to say, hey, maybe Trey Smith's going to, hurt himself or do whatever, if the team wants to wait till the last minute or whatever the case may be, as long as they get the deal done, that's fine by me. If they don't get the deal done, we have a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if they don't get the deal done, the deal is you're now looking at, you do not have the leverage because the cap number would be even higher for him next year. So you're not tagging him next year, in which case he's probably going to hit the market. You might get a compensatory pick for him, but that's something that always gets mangled in this. People are like, well, why didn't you just let him walk and take the comp pick? Comp picks are not necessarily this easy mathematic formula. We do think that Trey Smith probably would hit that mark. He was a lot of places top ranked free agent this year going into this free agent class, but that's not a certain thing, right? So if they don't get it done, they're saying they must feel really great about Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, or whatever, because the long-term outlook there is like, and let's be clear, guard is one of the more replaceable positions in the league, and where they pick at 31, 32, usually, there's usually a good guard just sitting there for them to take. And we usually sneer at that idea just because of positional value. But if they wanted to do that sort of take and take an Osiris Torrance, who won a couple of picks after them a couple of years ago or whatever, they can do that. But at the end of the day, we're already here. You've already you've already handcuffed yourself to this $23 million cap hit throughout free agency. If you wanted to put the cap back in the box and say, what could they have done during free agency without having that big cap number? Again, the Joe Tooney, Trey Smith conversation, or if they walked on both of them, I just ultimately just comes back to this. Brett Veach, after the way that game went down in New Orleans, which Taylor very, very unfortunately got to witness firsthand. I remember him telling me, he's like, boy, I sure hope that they pull this off, because my bank account, man, it's going to be a tight one. But
buddy, let me just say, the bank account is one thing, but the way that game went down, I mean, I tell everybody, outside of the tragic death of my friends and family that have happened throughout my life, that was the worst day of my life. That was absolutely just could not.
And for you, like, you paid to see the spectacle, right? It's a Super Bowl. That game was over before halftime. Believe me, I had to host the halftime show, and I'm sitting here like, hey, maybe they could do the Falcons. No, it didn't happen. So, but you couldn't you wanted to just throw up, but you couldn't walk away because you're like, well, I'm going to sit here and watch this ass kicking because I paid for it. It's like being
we
trapped
left in the end of the third quarter, and leaving a Super Bowl early is an all-time bad experience. I mean, that was just, and then Eagles fans chanting in the streets of New Orleans all night long. I mean, it was
Yes.
As much of sports PTSD as one can have. It's one of the main reasons that took a couple months off from podcasting. Just not feeling it, but we're back. We're ready for the new season. It's not the end of the world. But that was all me saying, yes, I do remember the Super Bowl. I remember it every day.
Yeah, I just don't think Brett Veach, after the way that game went down, could have been like, hey, we're going to trade 2 guards, and then we'll figure out left tackle later. And it's just Creed Humphrey and Juwan Taylor, baby, going forward. I just don't, that stability is something, not even to the fan base, but to your quarterback, right? Like, Patrick Mahomes is the sun in which this galaxy orbits. Wait, I think that might be a bad astrology. The galaxy
right for Mahomes, though.
So the sun is in the galaxy. I don't know. Okay, but either
sun
way,
is one of the many stars in the galaxy. The galaxy rotates around a supermassive black hole, which is Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, there we go. So either way, we will see. That's really just what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
It'll be a Stews day tomorrow with Sterling Holmes and Josh Briscoe. So tune in. This will be like right at the time it's happening. So hopefully you'll get their live instant reaction. I'm sure Matt Connor already has an article like pre-drafted for the Trey Smith. So be paying attention to the written content on Arrowhead Addict as well. Hey, if you're watching this, make sure to throw us a like and a subscribe. We're trying to grow this community as much as possible. You really want to get in it during training camp. And then we have the best post-game parties ever. We've had Chris Jones on post-game videos before too, back when he had COVID and was watching a game from the home from his house. So make sure to check us out and to hit subscribe so you can join this community. All right. So Taylor and I came up with this really fun activity. I'm pretty excited about this. We were talking about it before we got on here, just kind of our strategy and everything. So we're going to do a draft of future Chiefs Ring of Honor members. So people that we think are going to go into the Ring of Honor, but we put a little caveat on it because it's not really fun for Taylor to go, okay, Patrick Mahomes. And I go, okay, Travis Kelce. And then he goes, okay, Chris Jones. Okay, I go Andy Reid. That's not fun. All right. We know those guys are going in. It's just, how big is the statue going to be for Patrick Mahomes, et cetera. So in order to do this a little bit, we are picking Andy Reid era players who are no longer on the team. So for instance, you cannot pick Chris Jones for this activity. He's still on the team. You want to pick, let's take L'Jarius Sneed. He's available because he's not playing on the team anymore. And he played with Andy Reid. So there's a lot of players that we could probably sit here and do several podcasts about going back in time, right? In the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that. By the way, like shout out some evergreen content on the Arrowhead Addict channel. Last year, our guys, Matt Connor, Sterling Holmes, and I believe, I'm trying to remember who else did it. They did a top 50 Chiefs of all time, and they like each video's by 10s or 5s, I believe. Check that out too. That's a really cool activity, kind of in the same vein. So we're going to do a draft, and we're going to see who ends up with the better team. So put in the chat afterwards if you think Taylor's team ends up being better or my team ends up being better. I'm interested to see where Taylor goes with his first pick. Since you are the guest, I, of course, will let you pick first. So who is, and I don't know how you want to think about this. If you want to think of like who is most likely to be correct or who should be, what do you think?
Yeah, the way I approach this is really, if I was making the selection, who would I pick? Like, so just as the Chiefs, and that can be, the same as the most likely to be picked, or to me, it's more who's most deserving. That's kind of the direction I'm going, is who is most deserving of being in the Ring of Honor. If that was an Andy Reid era Chief, that is not a current Chief. So as you said, a lot of guys that are currently on the team between Creed and Kareem and Butker, McDuffie, all those guys, none of those guys are eligible here, but we have plenty to choose from. I will say right off the bat, though, if anyone else is thinking, hey, you missed a guy, Tamba Hali is not eligible for this because he is already in the Ring of Honor. He's the only person that qualifies as an Andy Reid era Chief, not on the team, that is in the Ring of Honor. So don't come at us for not picking Tamba. We love Tamba, but ineligible here. So
yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that as well too, because he was definitely one of the first names I thought of when I was thinking of it.
Of course.
Like, oh shoot,
yeah,
he's already in. So yeah, for sure. So your first pick, who's it going to be?
So my first pick, I really think it's between 2 guys, and I assume whichever one I don't pick here, it's going to be your first pick. So without further ado, I've got to start with the Cheetah. I've got to start with Tyreek Hill. I think that what he brought to this franchise in terms of explosiveness and in terms of just raw playmaking potential, he's one of the all-time playmakers in NFL history, not just Chiefs history, in NFL history. And whether that's home runs that he hit on, just receiving the ball as his normal wide receiver role, or running the ball, which he did plenty of, or kickoff or punt returns, which he also scored touchdowns on those. I mean, Tyreek is right up there with, Barry Sanders and Randy Moss and guys that anytime they touch the ball, they could have housed it. And that is still on the Dolphins, still Tyreek Hill. And his time in Kansas City was, just full of that. 73 games started. He was, the accolades for Tyreek: 6-time Pro Bowler in all 6 seasons that he was in Kansas City, 3-time first-team All-Pro. So just a monster on the accolades. 479 catches, 6,630 yards, 56 receiving touchdowns. And then what I always thought was a lot of fun about Tyreek's game: 93 rushes, 719 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 4 punt return touchdowns, 1 kickoff return touchdown. He is 4th in franchise history in receptions, 5th in franchise history in receiving yards, 4th in receiving touchdowns, 4th in total touchdowns, and 49th in rushing yards as a Chief, ahead of running backs like Jackie Battle, LaShawn McCoy, Jerick McKinnon, guys like that. He had more rushing yards than those guys. Now, obviously, he had plenty of opportunity for that, but Tyreek is an all-timer in many ways and definitely deserves to be up in the Ring of Honor.
Cannot disagree. Super Bowl champion, really kind of one of the signature pieces of the first era or iteration of this Chiefs dynasty. And I remember thinking his 2015 or 15 or 16, where he was just kind of that true gadget guy, where the returns, they'd hand him the ball. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking, we probably just saw the best season Tyreek Hill could ever have. And then they cut Jeremy Maclin in training camp. And I'm like, boy, they're really heavy on this Tyreek Hill becoming a full-time wide receiver. And the amount of work that he put in to become a quality route runner with good hands, who played way bigger than his size, an all-time freak at the position. His quads look like biceps, bro. You can see the definition of his leg muscles. An all-time freak at the position.
College running back, by the way, which is very hard to do, to be a all-pro wide receiver in the NFL after playing running back in college. He's a monster.
Yes, so certainly deserving. I think it's just a matter of when, not if, for him. And I think something else you got to mention too is, not only was he so productive and so effective when he was here, the trade of him helped cement the second part of this dynasty.
Yes.
Right? Having him, if you told me that Tyreek Hill was the second best draft pick in Chiefs history, I'd believe it. A 5th-round pick who was a 6-time All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time All-Pro, who also netted them Trent McDuffie and the other players in that trade, and then the salary cap space that helped cement the rest of the dynasty. It's got to be one of the most effective value draft picks of all time for the Chiefs.
100% agree. Are you going Mahomes one there, just so we're on the same page for best
yes. It's tough because obviously you could get into value
overall,
but we just said he's the black hole, the mask, the interstellar of it all. Okay, so you definitely took one of the guys that was on the top of my list. I'm gonna go with a little bit something closer to your heartstrings here. We're gonna take Eric Berry with my first pick. A 5-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time All-Pro, a member of the 2010 All-Decades team for the Hall of Fame, the unanimous 2015 AP Comeback Player of the Year, 14 career interceptions, including 5 pick sixes and a pick 2. Don't forget that in Atlanta. He spent all 9 years of his career in Kansas City. This was a guy, people are wondering, why are you taking a safety this high in the draft? And he was able to come in and just have instant impact. He was one of the best players at his position during his time. He's one of the very few players that I've seen. I believe it was 2015 or 16. I've never seen a safety have a year like he had, where it just felt like at the safety position, he was taking over games. So effective in the box, so effective against the run, had some legendary matchups against guys like Antonio Gates in the division. And an all-time chills moment, him coming out in Arrowhead after beating leukemia, a very unique situation for a player who is in peak physical condition. And, really the only thing that I'm sad about is just kind of how it ended with him, where he just very clearly wasn't 100%. And we had the
Day-to-day.
infamous day-to-day, but he did get to brush shoulders with Patrick Mahomes. And it sucks that the lasting image of him for me is Rob Gronkowski is still eating his lunch, which was like the one player that always got him. But he's an all-time Chief. I think it's just a matter of time before he's in that Ring of Honor, and did a lot of great things off the field when he was here too. A high-quality player. So shout out to him. And I just think it's a matter of if not when for Eric Berry.
I agree for sure. He means a ton to the culture and meant a ton to the culture while he was here, and that can't be understated. His 9 seasons he was a consummate professional. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler before Andy got here in 2013. He made the Pro Bowl in 10 and 12. And this does bring up an interesting kind of point that you and I talked about in this draft, is how much we're considering pre-Andy. They're Andy Reid era players, but some of these players did accomplish some things before Andy Reid took over in 2013. And we are considering their whole careers in some of these conversations. That might come up with a couple guys later. But Eric Berry, man, I mean, what more can you say? He was
Eric
Berry, yo, he's scary. I mean, he was the horse stuff. I mean, all of his.
I forgot about the horse.
Oh yeah, he's afraid of horses and war paint. He's get that horse out of here, and he was the best. His aura was pretty unmatched on the defensive side. Just a monster. I was really, really happy that he spent his whole NFL career in Kansas City from age 22 to 30. I mean, he was a beast. Loved him.
Yeah, and I mean, also not only battled cancer, but also battled an Achilles injury that lingered, that gave him that really strange injury that lingered into 2018. But at least he got to play in an AFC Championship in Arrowhead, the first one in a very long time, or first one ever. I'm not sure.
No, first one since '93.
Okay, yeah.
93 was, they were at Buffalo for that one. So they technically hosted the AFC Championship must have been 69 then, Super Bowl 4. But yes, you're right. First one in 50 years. And let's not forget, first pick 2 in NFL history. That one against Atlanta was the first time anyone had ever returned a 2-point conversion for a touchdown. Pretty cool.
Epic. All right, number 2, break my heart.
So we typically snake draft in It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom, because if you pick one, you've got a bit of an advantage. So we typically go 1 and then, 2, 3 snake and 4, 5 snake. So I'm gonna give you the third pick, and then I'll take 4 and 5.
So this one's really tough for me, because I feel like now, like if we're doing tiers, like Barry and Hill, we're kind of tier 1. This guy, I will tell you this guy, I think that there's a case to be made for him for the NFL Hall of Fame. And he's a guy that there's quite a bit of discourse around. I'm not sure that he will actually make the NFL Hall of Fame, but I think one of the best ways to measure a player is to say, was this player at one time, what was his peak like? Like Priest Holmes, one of those guys, his peak was about as good as anybody else. And for 2 or 3 years there, if you had Jamal Charles on your fantasy team, you were the god. You were the guy. He was the 1-1. And Jamal Charles, I referred back to he never led the league in rushing in any one year when he was with the Chiefs. He did lead in rushing touchdowns one year, but you want to talk about a guy who's ahead of his time as far as running the ball. His game against the Seahawks in 2015 might be one of the best games I've ever seen from a running back, man.
Yeah.
Just the burst, the ability, the vision, the burst. And when he started striding, man, like he was one of those guys that was quicker than fast. And he never looked like you watch some guys and it's like, wow, he looks like he's running very fast. Like Tyreek Hill's one of those guys. Jamal Charles never looked like he was running that fast, but he just break away from everyone. The 4 touchdown game in Denver, against the Raiders, Oakland, in Oakland, all of them like screen passes. Just truly at one time was the peak of the position. A 4-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, 7,563 total yards, 10,100. I'm sorry, I totally butchered that. 7,563 rushing yards, 10,156 total yards. The receiving, a big part of his game. Another one of those guys who was a true weapon in the passing game. 64 total touchdowns, career 5.5 yards per carry. That's a number that a lot of people cite as far as like a case for him to be one of the Hall of Fame, because he still has one of the highest yards per carry ever for a running back with that amount of carries, and led the NFL in rushing touchdowns in 2013. So Jamal Charles, he was the catalyst of this offense. It was Andy Reid came in and we started to build the offense around Jamal Charles.
Yeah, he was when you talk about playmakers, like I talked about with Tyreek Hill, I mean, he's also right up there in NFL history for ability to house one when he touches the ball. That I always remember that game at Oakland, not only because he was my fantasy running back and put up like 65 points that week, but 195 yards receiving and 4 receiving touchdowns. Plus he had another rushing touchdown in there. So he had 5 touchdowns in a game, which, I mean, that's rare air in the NFL. And not only that game, but, you know, he set the Chiefs single game rushing record at the Saints. He was as good and as dominant of a running back for a team that has had good and dominant running backs for the majority, certainly of your and I lifetimes. You know, he's right up there with Priest and Marcus and Christian Okoye and Larry Johnson and all those guys. I mean, there have been some epic talent at the running back slot, but he's the franchise's all-time leader in rush yards, which given just his body type, he's a sprinter. You know, he was a track and field guy in college, and I obviously played at Texas too at football, but the sprinting kind of mindset meant that when he was on the edge, when he got a crease, when he saw an opening, there were not many, if any, guys on the field that could catch up to him. 2-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler. Jamal was the whole offense from 08 to 16 when it was his last year here. The offense revolved around him, and for good reason. I mean, Andy Reid would get in trouble when he wasn't featuring Jamal Charles enough, as he would often do in his early coaching days of not featuring dominant running backs enough. But, you know, Jamal was everything that you wanted out of a running back and a teammate. He was the best.
Yeah, and I mean, something that you got to bring up too is the productivity for him. This wasn't a guy, we see this all the time now, where a rookie running back will come in like Ashton Genty or a Bijan Robinson, and there's a chance that they'll, get 100, 200, 300 carries in a season and be the workhorse. He was glued to the bench for a couple of years by Todd Haley, who brought in Thomas Jones, and he was fighting that. And it wasn't until he started really making big impact on kickoff return that he finally got his opportunity. So, he put up those numbers despite some of the playing opportunities that he should have had. So yeah, Jamal Charles, he's some of the stuff he does with Special Olympics and stuff like that is great work too. He's a great representation of Kansas City.
Yes.
I will now reserve some time in my brain for the once a day that I think about Patrick Mahomes and Jamal Charles being in the same offense, because we never got to see it. And it's just a sliding glass doors moment in life.
Yeah, we saw a practice handoff between the two.
I know
when Jamal retired as a Chief, and I remember just sitting there looking at that going, man, he was. And I mean, look at the time, Kareem Hunt was on the team and was a dude his first year. So I mean, it's not that team in 18 necessarily needed Jamal, but the peak of Jamal's powers and the peak of Patrick Mahomes' powers, we deserve to see them at the same time. That would have broken scoreboards. It would have been ridiculous.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm up with 4. I went 1, you went 2 and 3. It's back to me on 4. I'm going to pick a guy that I thought in my mind was right up there with Tyreek Hill, is who I was deciding between this guy and Tyreek. And I got to go with number 11. Got to go with Alex Smith. Smith, for all of his struggles that he had in San Francisco, was traded for by Andy Reid when he got here to right the ship of a long, horrible history of the Chiefs not having any quarterback since Trent Green. And I mean, he stepped in, and during his time here, all he did was go to 3 Pro Bowls, have a 50-26 record as a starter, 17,000 passing yards, 102 touchdowns to only 33 interceptions. His main superpower, of course, was taking care of the football. A 94.8 quarterback rating, which is the second best in Chiefs history. So certainly, was a guy that you could count on to not blow the game for you. Obviously, they moved on because they needed a guy with a higher ceiling than Alex Smith, but his floor was very high. He is 4th all-time on the franchise in pass attempts and yards, 5th in passing touchdowns, as I said, 2nd in rating. Pro Football Reference does a adjusted net yards per attempt, which is kind of a overall quarterback. The higher number there, usually means that you're not only good at taking risks, but you're also good at taking care of the ball. His is 2nd in franchise history, of course, behind Mahomes. Just not a lot of bad things anybody can say about Alex Smith, let alone the fact that he then was able to handle the Mahomes situation with such class and mentoring. And who knows what version of Patrick Mahomes the Chiefs get if Alex Smith treats him the way that Ben Roethlisberger or Aaron Rodgers or any of those guys. I guess Favre treating Rodgers maybe is more appropriate, but how some of those older quarterbacks that were fighting for their own job when they get a younger guy come in there. Alex Smith was the exact opposite. He was team first. He said, I will show this kid everything I can think of to teach him, and Mahomes might end up being the greatest quarterback of all time. So just a major, major shout out to Alex Smith for beginning the Andy Reid era on the right foot. They started off, of course, winning their first 9 games in 2013, which for a team that only won 2 games the previous year was just a shock of greatness and fun and excitement in this franchise. So I love Alex Smith, and I'll always love him. Of course, the leg broken stuff that he suffered when he was in Washington and all that was
crazy,
horrifying. And I mean, he almost lost his leg and everything that happened with there. I think any Chiefs fan that has anything negative to say about Alex Smith just doesn't know ball and wasn't around for the Smith days.
Yeah, man. The leg thing, if you've ever watched I believe it's an E60 documentary about it. Just, I mean, he was legitimately fighting for his life with that. Truly crazy. Alex Smith was certainly on my list too. You could probably just take in the impact he had on Patrick Mahomes at all, just that, and say like, hey, like this guy should make the Ring of Honor. And especially whenever you come into the fact that he was replaced once by a younger quarterback, Colin Kaepernick, in San Francisco. And that could have left a very bad taste in his mouth. And instead he, brought in the kid behind him and showed him how to be a professional quarterback and how to study tape. You listen to some of the stuff that happened with Caleb Williams this year in Chicago. He literally did not know how to watch film. And that sort of impact, it's part of the reason why there's the Lombardis in Kansas City that there are now. And, I always just like to throw this here too. When it came to Alex Smith, he broke the playoff curse, right? Like that. I think that was going for 30 years. We won't mention the fact we're being positive right now. We won't mention the many shortcomings, but for them to break that curse was massive. For them to get that monkey off of their back, and for him to nurture Patrick Mahomes to the quarterback he is today. And then, oh, by the way, netted the Chiefs a 3rd-round pick and Kendall Fuller. So that 3rd-round pick ended up being Derek Nottie. So you traded Alex Smith for Patrick Mahomes in a way, Derek Nottie and Kendall Fuller, 2 guys who were very important to that iteration of the defense that won in Miami. That's a hell of a trade for a guy that you gave up 2 second-round picks for, an instant culture changer, and a guy who, has been a great representation of Kansas City since he left too. Obviously the injury, him fighting back from that, winning comeback player of the year, does great work on television now too, and just seems like an all-around stand-up guy. So Alex Smith has definitely earned his spot in the Ring of Honor, no doubt. All right, so we're snake drafting. So your team so far, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Alex Smith, I have Eric Berry and Jamal Charles. Who are you taking next?
I am going with a guy that was an absolute terror against other teams for the entire time that he was a Chief. Of course, I'm talking about 4-time Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro selection in 2014 when he set a Chiefs franchise record with 22 sacks, a half sack short of the NFL record. The big man, Justin Houston. He played 102 games for the franchise, did end up picking off 4 passes for himself, which was not too bad. 14 fumbles forced, 2 defensive touchdowns, 78.5 career sacks, which is 5th in the all-time Chiefs leaderboard in sacks, 319 tackles, and just a monster. He, a long time Houston and Ali formed, one of, if not the best pass rushing duos that the Chiefs have ever had, and was certainly a guy that other teams, a lot of times, like you talk about with Chris Jones these days, other teams have to game plan specifically for Justin Houston, make sure they had a guy on him at all times, no matter where he was. He could wreck a game. He could absolutely blow a game up if he had one of his better ones. And, he was a guy that was the whole defense when he was going right, when he was healthy and active and doing that stuff. I mean, Bob Sutton should thank his lucky stars that he had a guy like Justin Houston on that defense, because otherwise things might have turned out even worse for old Bob. But no, I love Justin Houston. He deserves to be on the Ring of Honor, and I'm happy to pick him on my team.
He was certainly one of the names that I had on my list, and I thought about him a lot. And obviously, you bring up the 22 sack season. Another player at his peak was truly unstoppable. And when you measure him by that peak, it's hard not to think about him being one of the most effective Chiefs pass rushers that they've ever had. And for me, he spent quite a bit of time after the Chiefs organization. It felt like there was an exodus there that wasn't necessarily the most welcome. There was some bad blood there, right? He played for 2 more years in Indianapolis, 2 more years in Baltimore, 78.5 sacks here in Kansas City, 19 in Indianapolis, 14 in Baltimore, half a sack in Carolina, and then came back to Arrowhead in a playoff game with the Dolphins to freeze his ass off and just get decimated by that. Here's the thing. I certainly think that there's a case for him. He's one of those guys that I almost wonder if the way he exited might impact that, but I certainly hope that's not the case, because when he was on the field, he was one of the most unstoppable forces. And Justin Houston, the person, is a really interesting person too. I believe there's an article written on The Athletic or maybe The Ringer about him like rescuing one of his brothers in a burning house when they were a kid or something.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Like a really interesting person. I know he was someone that not everyone enjoyed interviewing in the locker room. I think that he was, there's some guys who are a little bit more affable than others. He might not have fallen in there, but an absolute bamf on the field, right? Just someone that you did not want to mess with, and a great aesthetic too. The bald head, he was great. I ate many a Big Mac, in college, thankfully, to Justin Houston and the Big Mac Sacks program. So great call out there. So we're building a great team here. Okay, so let's see here. Okay,
back-to-backs for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to take them in the order that I think that they should happen.
Yeah.
So I believe the best player that was a Kansas City Chief that we have not mentioned yet, and that fits in this category, is Derek Johnson. A one-time All-Pro, made a second-team All-Pro as well, too. 4-time Pro Bowler. Spent all 13 years of his career in Kansas City, minus this weird little fluke he had with the Raiders there at the end that we'll not acknowledge here. 77 passes defended as a linebacker. He was ahead of his time as a coverage backer. And by the way, I swear this man could have had like 15 more interceptions than he had, which was 14, because there was a reason he was not a wide receiver. He is the leading tackler in franchise history, second in franchise history in tackles for a loss, behind previously mentioned Ring of Honor member Tamba Hali. Another guy who battled through some injuries. But man, when he was at the peak of his power, you could just expect for him to just come flying through the line of scrimmage and bring down a quarterback, bring down a running back behind the line of scrimmage. Great vision, great ability to cover the middle of the field. Again, ahead of his time. And if it hadn't been for just some of those stellar defenses around the same time, whether it be in Denver or Seattle, I think he should have got a lot more recognition than he did as just being an only one-time All-Pro. Derek Johnson, when he was at the peak of his powers, that defense with him and Eric Berry, Justin Houston, those were some really fun defenses, man. Yes. And we're getting some Bob Sutton conversation here in the chat. He will not. That's a Voldemort for me. I will not mention those names. We got to hold him accountable for throwing away some of these great defenses that they had.
Yeah. It was an experience to be a Chiefs fan. Of course, it always is. Even when things are going well, it's an experience. But that's a great pick. And Derek Johnson was, again, he was another guy that was just all over. He was just all over the field. He did everything right. He was a consummate professional. A middle linebacker is a funny position, because you always feel like, even though they're extremely important for like the communication of the defense and a lot of the things that they do, linebacker just gets overlooked. It gets overlooked by your edge rushers and your cornerbacks and kind of the flashier positions on the field. But I mean, there was no steadier hand on the Chiefs defense than Derek Johnson while he was here. He was a rock, and he might have been a little salty about not being able to finish his career in Kansas City. So that's why he took his talents to Oakland. And but in general, I don't think the way that a player's career ends or off-field issues that they might have. I was thinking back to the Tyreek Hill pick, and like a lot of people are probably thinking like, man, I don't know if they're going to put Tyreek Hill in the Ring of Honor because of his off-field stuff. But like, I don't think it should be about that. I don't think it should be. I think it should be about contributions to the football field and Derek Johnson's one of the better, or up there right at the top of best linebackers in franchise history. He definitely belongs there.
Absolutely. All right. So my next pick, this one I think might be a little controversial, but I think when you look at what he was to the team, I think it fits. Super Bowl champion, a 2-time All-Pro, a 2-time Pro Bowler, a member of the Hall of Fame All-Decades team, 13 interceptions in just 3 years in Kansas City, Super Bowl champion Tyrann Mathieu.
Sure.
I think Tyrann Mathieu was the very clear vocal leader of that defense. Him and Frank Clark came in and changed the culture of that defense. And if you ever get the opportunity to listen on Sports Radio 810, New Day with SSJ, Garrick Dieter and Anthony Sherman, they go on that show and they talk and they talk about training camp and stuff like that. And listening to Sherman and Dieter talk about how different those guys made training camp and the attitude of the defense, that needed to happen as much as the personnel change. They played a passive form of off coverage that they set back in coverage and waited for everything to come to them. And they brought in Spags and they brought in Anthony Hitchens. They brought in Frank Clark. They brought in Tyrann Mathieu, and they totally shifted the culture around that defense. And, we think about the 2019 Super Bowl as being this offensive superpower. That was a top 10 defense that year. Mm-hmm. And if you remember down that stretch, they needed that defense to be good because Patrick Mahomes is coming back from injury. They won some of those games with Matt Moore starting. They needed all of that for them. And Tyrann Mathieu, to me, was the spear of the tip of the spear for all of that. He totally changed that. And he was really, really good in Kansas City in his time there. Being able to work out of the slot, being able to play in the box. He was, again, we've seen this with Justin Reid and Tyrann Mathieu. They're the brain behind what is that Steve Spagnuolo defense. One of the best free agent signings the Chiefs have ever made. As much as I am blocked by Tyrann Mathieu on Twitter for reasons we will not be talking about here today, his exit, again, kind of like the Justin Hughes thing, his exit wasn't as gracious as his entrance, but you've got to recognize what he did. He will forever be a champion in Kansas City. Tyrann Mathieu should never have to buy a beer here in KC. The Honey Badger, Ring of Honor member.
Yeah, he was the man. Culture. It was all about the culture with him.
Championship swagger.
Championship swagger, the landlord, all the stuff that he and Frank Clark kind of, you could maybe duo nominate them if you wanted. They both kind of represented the same thing for this team at the same time. That attitude was different. That was different when he came in here, and it just, things changed. Things changed on a dime. And obviously winning a Super Bowl in 2019, that's a big deal. That was a big deal for this franchise to win Super Bowl 54. And there were a couple people that were more responsible for it than Tyrann Mathieu, but not too many. He was right up there on the short list of people that, I remember, the 13 seconds game, and the Chiefs said we had a whole defensive game plan centered around Tyrann Mathieu, and he was going to be the focal point of everything we do.
Part of me wonders if he was supposed to cover Gabe Davis that game, because nobody did. Nobody freaking did. But no. Maybe when he got concussed in that game on like the second or third play, they just like, oh, we forgot. Oh, yeah, he was supposed to cover him. He's not on the field anymore. We had no idea. Oh, well, there goes Gabe Davis again.
Yeah, they had to fall back to a non-Tyrann Mathieu game plan, and very clearly you could tell that was not working. That was not gonna. So that's all. Whenever I think of Tyrann Mathieu's like contributions to the Chiefs and how important he was on the defense, I always think about 13 seconds in a game that he didn't play, but in a game that they talk about. Spags said, like, man, we had some stuff cooked up for Honey Badger. If he had been there that whole game, who knows how it goes, but it certainly doesn't show, or doesn't have Gabe Davis running free for 4 touchdowns in that game. That's for sure.
One of the more prolific ball hawks the Chiefs have had since Marcus Peters. Really good at getting his hands on the ball. Very versatile. Yep. He was good. He was good as a blitzer. He was good in run defense. He was good in coverage. You factor in 2019, Juan Thornhill was playing extremely well in his rookie year, tears his ACL towards the back end of that year. And they have to go and put more on his play with Daniel Sorensen. They had to start running Kendall Fuller at safety some. So that just even adds more to the value of like what they did for that defense and just instantly turning it around. So that's why I picked him. And boy, if you're Jaden Hicks and you're listening to this, like we're talking about Eric Berry, we're talking about Tyrann Mathieu. I thought about Justin Reid for my list. Like Jaden Hicks, buddy, you've got some big shoes here to fill in Kansas City. So that journey for him will start up in St. Joe here next week. Taylor, your final pick.
My final two picks will be picks 8 and 9. I'm going to do a duo nomination here. I thought about maybe doing it with Matthew and Frank Clark earlier. You got half of them. So I'm going to pick two big uglies, two guys that were vital to that 2019 Super Bowl run and guys that were sorely missed in the 2020 Super Bowl that we don't like to talk about either. One of the two that we don't like to talk about. Of course, I'm talking about left tackle Eric Fisher and right tackle Mitchell Schwartz. Those guys, Schwartz probably, I mean, by most would be considered the better of the two players. At the right tackle position, he was a 3-time second-team All-Pro and one-time first-team All-Pro, and weirdly enough, never a Pro Bowl selection, which just shows that the Pro Bowl system is it's got some flaws. Eric Fisher was a 2-time Pro Bowler, and those guys were, I think, maybe are more appreciated in hindsight the further away Chiefs fans get from having an offensive line that had good to great tackle play most of the time. And I mean, they were bookends. They both were always, when they were on the field, making stuff happen. And again, much like I was thinking about with Tyrann Mathieu when he was taken out of the game in the 13 seconds game and how that went. I appreciate Schwartz and Fisher more because of how Super Bowl 55 went and how you could tell that without those guys in there, and there was a little bit of a short-term turnaround and all the other aspects that went into play, playing a team on the road in the Super Bowl, which was cool. That was a lot of fun. Not having Schwartz and Fisher there that was a big blow. And they were dogs. They were both just a lot of fun to watch play. I miss them both, and I'm going to duo tandem nominate them at 8 and 9.
So Eric Fisher, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the 2013 draft, like all-time terrible draft as far as first-round picks go. Yeah. There were so many busts there. This team had the number 1 overall pick in a year that nobody wanted it. There were so many names in the top 10 that they could have taken and royally screwed up.
Yep.
But they kept the ball in the fairway. And one of the first things that this team did after getting Andy Reid, after getting Alex Smith, is they got their left tackle of the future. And he solidified that position for almost 7 years. And that was huge for this was a perfect situation to bring a young quarterback into. And then you compile that by bringing in a guy that we still to this day will never understand how he hit free agency in Mitchell Schwartz, identifying him. Mitchell Schwartz's performance in the 2019 playoffs might be one of the best stretches we've seen from a tackle. Just pitched an absolute shutout. I think it was 1 pressure allowed. And if you go back and watch that 49ers defense, that defense was hell on wheels. You've got rookie Nick Bosa. They had D Ford at the time. You had all those guys at the height of their power. That defense was crazy good. And he pitched an absolute shutout. So both those guys instrumental in developing Patrick Mahomes. And let's be clear, this franchise has literally never recovered from losing those guys in about a 2-month span, because when they lost both of them, this team's been trying to keep their head above water ever since. And we hope that Josh Simmons is that guy. Right. But we have not answered the question, then who, every year almost since those guys have left. So I totally agree. I had both of those guys on my list. I think I had Fisher a little bit higher since he was a career Chief almost the entire time. Yeah. But Schwartz's peak was as good as any tackle in the game.
Schwartz was the best right tackle in the game for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he is that Penei Sewell, Lane Johnson type of player.
Yeah.
And I'm Fisher was never quite as charismatic as Mitchell Schwartz is. It's great that Schwartz still does some stuff, and obviously Jeff Schwartz playing for the Chiefs for a while there too. It's very cool that both those guys are, and I know Mitch still lives here in Kansas City, so it's always great to see those guys who are Chiefs come back and never leave Kansas City. So
and I'm glad you mentioned the 2013. The Chiefs having the number 1 pick. It's just funny. The 2 number 1 picks before that were Cam Newton and Andrew Luck. Before 2013 was was Eric Fisher. It's crazy how, that type of little butterfly effect of not having a superstar 1-1 quarterback go in the first round. I mean, that could have changed everything. That could have changed if the Chiefs, if it was 1 year earlier and the Chiefs drafted Andrew Luck 1 overall, I mean, everything changes. It's just wild how the NFL works.
And I mean, look who went right behind him. Like there was some discussion, Eric Fisher or Luke Jokel. Like Luke Jokel played at a bigger school. Fisher had more of the tools. And again, they kept it on the fairway. They did the right thing. Yep. They did not blow it. And that's huge. So last pick here. I saved the most controversial for last. And I was talking to this about it. This is a guy who did a lot for Kansas City. He, really brought a lot of recognition for who they are. It's Chiefsaholic. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, just kidding. This guy isn't a player though. I did joke about that. Shout out to all those incarcerated. You're not a good person. Just would like to throw that out there. Anybody who has pity for that man, you will not be getting it from me. But that's a story for another day. This guy was not a player, and I think that some people could look at this as controversial, but this franchise literally would not be what it is today without this man. He was fired. He was replaced. He did not win a Super Bowl in Kansas City, but he drafted the 3 most fundamental pieces of the Chiefs dynasty: Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. He also drafted Eric Fisher, LDT, Laurent Duvernay Tardif, Marcus Peters, Mitch Schwartz, Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt. He signed Mitchell Schwartz. I'm talking about John Dorsey. And there are, in case you don't know, it's not just players in the Ring of Honor. There's coaches, there's executives. And I feel that this franchise has every right to honor John Dorsey.
Sure.
Though his exit in Kansas City wasn't what it wanted to be, and it's turned out all right, this team literally not be where it is. And I know that a lot of people want to give Brett Veach the credit for targeting Patrick Mahomes and bringing him in here. And even if you do that, I still think that there is a case for John Dorsey. But keep in mind too, knowing the player to pick is half the battle. He had to execute the trade to get up there, to know when to go get there. How high did he have to go? What was too high? What was too much to give up? None of this works out if they take Deshaun Watson, as we've clearly seen, right? So they had to get Patrick Mahomes and get that trade. And he pulled all those things off. And the man's talent, his eye for talent is undeniable. He went to Cleveland. And by the way, a lot of players that he drafted, Myles Garrett, Baker Mayfield when he was on the team, a lot of the guys that he brought in there are Denzel Ward, are still key cogs of that franchise. And then, by the way, then he went and was like an assistant in Detroit, who is like one of the most talent-rich teams in the league still to this day. The man has an eye for talent. Buddy boy, he chewed that gum. He was an old football head. He did not manage the salary cap well, and I believe that was ultimately led to his demise in Kansas City. But John Dorsey is a huge part of the Chiefs dynasty, and I feel that his name should be up in the Ring of Honor one day.
I love the pick. I do think that Dorsey gets a bad rap, and the way that the Mahomes stuff went down. Look, I love Brett Veach, love him to death, and I do think that without Brett Veach's persistence, who knows if the Mahomes pick happens? Probably not. However, John Dorsey's the one that signed the draft card. John Dorsey's the one that executed the trade. John Dorsey's the one that drafted Mahomes. Yes, he had underlings that were pushing him to do that, but every GM has people under them telling them, I love this guy, I love this guy. You never give credit to any of those people. You always give credit to the GM that was there to preside over that pick. So yes, while I do think that Brett Veach is a dog of a GM and I love him, and I'm glad that he got the promotion, and I do think that Dorsey mismanaged the salary cap. Like you said, the talent evaluation and the talent acquisition was probably the best the Chiefs have ever had at the GM position. He was unbelievable. I also do think that the non-player introduction to the Ring of Honor is an interesting conversation to have, just about how the Chiefs would handle or manage people that weren't playing on the field. Casey Wolf just retired after 40 years. I wish I could think of the guy's name. Do you know his name off the top of your head? I'll Google it.
I can't remember, but at least there's a Wolf that rightfully deserves in the Ring of Honor.
Exactly. Not the Chiefsaholic, but Casey Wolf would be a good one to shout out to put up on the Ring of Honor, as well as the guy that I thought you were going to draft when you said a non-player, which was Eric Bieniemy. I think Eric Bieniemy's time in Kansas City was, the 2 Super Bowl wins, but also the 2018 through 2025 offenses, 2022 offense, 18 through 22, those 5 years, that is up there with the greatest show on turf and with the 90s Vikings and whatever super offense you want to talk about. as being one of the greatest offenses of all time. Eric Bieniemy presided over one of the greatest offenses of all time. He deserves it.
Yeah, and I think like one thing that's very underrated about Eric Bieniemy, he's a damn good running back coach.
Yes.
Like, he got good value out of
Ask
Sharkandrick
Jamal.
West. When Jamal Charles goes down, Sharkandrick West out of
Spencer Ware,
Niall Davis. I mean, there was a lot of guys who were highly productive.
Yeah.
I'm going to save the Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy dialogue for another controversial podcast that we can do because that's its own thing. But I certainly think he has a spot here in Chiefs history for sure.
Should we give shout outs?
Yeah. I do love this in the comment section. Brandon Bean for Chiefs Ring of Honor for all he's done for the Chiefs, giving them Patrick Mahomes, giving them Xavier Worthy, helping them, build this franchise. Where would we be without the 0-4 from the Bills? I mean, really, it's truly great.
And the Mahomes trade.
Yes,
he's we love Brandon Bean here.
So we pretty much drafted everyone I had on my list. The one guy that I had that did not make the list was Frank Clark. And, with Frank Clark, really what led me there to not selecting him was just his regular season production was nothing to sniff at. He struggled. There was clearly some health issues there that were lingering. But he still is the franchise leader in sacks in the postseason. And he's like top 3 all time in NFL postseason sack history. His ability to kick it on in the playoffs, especially that second run, you got it with him in 2019, 2020. But then to kind of get that second win in 22, where he was still an effective player, came back to the team on kind of a rework deal there. That was huge. So he's the one guy that was on my list. There's some others. Like I thought about Dontari Poe. I thought about Dwayne Bowe as guys there too.
How about Joe Tooney?
Joe Tooney was one of them, right? Like I thought about him too. I think he's a better candidate for the NFL Hall of Fame right now than he is maybe Chiefs Ring of Honor. But obviously a clear hey, we have to rebuild our entire offensive line. Let's get it right now. And Joe Tooney was that guy. He's like one of the only guys that I was super nervous about that contract, giving a guard that much money, worth every single damn penny. I thought about Mitch Morse a little bit too, but he just wasn't here for the Super Bowls.
Longevity wasn't there,
but a great player. So really, really fun activity. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Looking at the teams, so you put in the chat who you think is going to win. I think Taylor might have cooked me here. Tyreek Hill is such a great player. Alex Smith, Justin Houston, Mitchell Schwartz, Eric Fisher for Taylor. For me, Eric Bieniemy, Jamal Charles, Derek Johnson, Tyrann Mathieu, and John Dorsey. Your team is definitely winning in a fight because Dorse. I just feel like Dorse doesn't have the same zip that Justin Houston does. But the Alex Smith one is so sentimental. It's so feel good. Obviously Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. I don't know. It's tough. I got a lot of guys who've got a lot of all pros. I got several guys who are on some all decades teams. Really fun activity. And then, there's the list just goes on and on for guys who are currently with the team. Cause like we said, Mahomes, Kelsey, Jones, Andy Reid will be there too. Brett Veach will be there too. Harrison Bucker definitely has an argument to be made. And then you can even start talking about Creed and we hope that tomorrow we can, man, the list just goes on and on, right? Yeah. So whenever they build the new Arrowhead in Kansas, they just need to make that band around it really big. So they got lots of space. I got to start making the font smaller or something too. Cause I think even some guys that might surprise Mark Donovan, I think on the business side, have an argument for it to be made.
Sure, of course.
They've made some very savvy moves there too, whether it be the stuff in the international market and St. Joe, taking the training camp up there, whatever large amount of taxpayer money they are handed to build another stadium. They'll certainly put his name up there too. So really fun activity. And Taylor, it's great to have you back. It was a lot of fun to podcast with you today. One more time, tell us where we can find your show and when it's going to be starting back up.
Yeah, it's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. Wherever you get your podcasts, there will be an episode sitting in there from around the draft time. And we're coming back about 2 weeks from, I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow, maybe. It's right around the start of is that 1 week from tomorrow, actual start of training camp? Is it the 20th?
Yeah, so actually,
it's 1 week. Yeah.
We'll have a live Intangibles on the 21st, the day that Chiefs are reporting. So we'll get to see, them carrying in their pillows and their snackies and all those things into the dorm rooms. And
always
then Christian and I will be out at the very first training camp practice on the 22nd. We're going to be meeting up Going to be getting some delicious Il Lazzarone pizza afterwards up there in St. Joe's. So we'll be bringing all our observations to you right after that. So really fun time here. It's not really football season until we can start breaking down guys running around in shorts up in St. Joe. So the season is quickly approaching us. One more time, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe this video. Follow Arrowhead Addict for more content like this. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate producer Richard, who always does a fabulous job. Thank you so much for helping us out. And that's going to be it from us today here at Arrowhead Addict. As always, go Chiefs.